Hey y'all, it's Jay. Today we're going to talk about route number 2. If you missed it, route number 1 was in the last video, and I didn't actually call it out as route number 1. And when we're going down the analysis path after we get through with a few more things, and we start looking at matches and looking at choices and options and what pros are doing or what I'm doing, and we're doing analysis on it, I'll be calling it out as this is shot number X. This is route. His choices are route 1, route 2, or route 4. When I'm doing that, this will be route number 2 that we talk about today. Route number 1 was just rolling forward or back in the center of the table, or maybe driving it to a rail just to get that better angle. Before we get into the video though, I do want to take a moment. It is Memorial Day weekend, and it's a weekend that many people have forgotten the reason for. Memorial Day weekend is not about barbecues and parties and drinking. Memorial Day weekend is in memory of people who have fallen while defending our country. I personally have a friend that fell while we were in Afghanistan. Chip Ramsey, he was the commander of Headquarters Company, 20th Special Forces, personal friend of mine, and you know, we're going to miss him. And we already do miss him. So just a thought to remember that what Memorial Day is about. It is about the people who have fallen in the defense of our way of life, defense of our country. So have you ever heard somebody say, boy, he sure makes the game look easy? Well, the reason that happens is because of the routes. And we're going to show you how to do that right now so that you can run racks that look as easy as this. Wouldn't it be nice if every run was that easy? All right, so route number 2. Route number 2 is up the table, okay? And what I mean by that is if you have a ball somewhere near the rail and you need to get to the other end of the table, how do you do it? And route number 2 is, I'm going to call it straight up the table. Now there are 3 variations of it. One is to go straight up the table, one is to go forward into the rail, and one is to come back into this rail. I'm going to go over all 3 of those, but first I want to give you some rules. These are the rules that I use when I'm thinking about shooting this shot to get up the table for my next ball that's down there somewhere. Okay? Rule number 1, and this is rule number 1 always when we're talking about, all of these are about routes in general, not just this route, but all routes. Rule number 1, don't make shape if you have shape, the Buddy Hall rule. Buddy was famous for saying that. He said it all the time. It was, if you already have position, don't make position. And what he means by that is, let's say I've got something like, I don't know, like this. Let's say I've got something like this. My choices here are that I can shoot the ball in and force myself to go 3 rails around and up here for the 9 in the same corner. Or I can just roll it forward and shoot the 9 up there. Well, the 9 up in this corner, you know, of course, it's easier to hit the pocket you're closest to. So if we weren't in this kind of position where we already have a made position, we would want to get up here somewhere for the 9 in this corner, because this corner is an easier shot than that corner. However, because the position's already there, it changes the risk equation, okay? It is riskier to force the cue ball to come around to get over here than it is just to roll forward and take the shot up the table. So the right shot is roll the 8 in and then shoot the 9 up the table. That's the right shot. The rule, don't make shape if you already have shape. Rule number 2, and again, this is for all routes, not just this particular route. Rule 2 is, you want the last rail you hit to be the one the leave is pointed at. What do I mean by that? So let's say the 9's there. That means that by our rule of closest pocket, the easiest way to make that ball is to put it into this pocket here. Well, if you point to the center of the pocket, you point to the 9, that points at this rail. Okay, so it's pointing at this rail. Now, this is 1 rail. I know there's a pocket in the middle of it and it looks like 2 rails. It's not, it's 1. This is the long rail. Okay, so if I'm trying to get position into this pocket, I want the last rail I touch to be this long rail. Anywhere along this rail, okay? That's what I want. I want my last place to be on this rail. If it's up here, now we're pointed at this section of the rail, right? So I want the last rail I hit to be this section. Now there is one really big exception to this, and we're going to talk about it at length in another one, and that's when you short hop off a rail. So if this 9 was down here, I still want to hit this rail, but it's okay if the cue ball comes off this rail and short hops here, okay? What do I mean by that? It comes down, it hits that side rail, and then, yeah, okay, it touches that bottom rail, but that's okay because this leave zone, remember with this rail, that's all the way from here to the rail and back to here. So short hop's okay. But as a general rule, if I want to make a shot, I want to look at where the center of my leave zone is, and this rail is the one I want to hit last, okay? Rule number 3, we always want to use side spin. There are very, very few cases where you want to hit truly the center of the ball. Talking about left and right. Because of the proportions, you are much greater risk of a scratch if you let the cue ball go with knowing no left or right English than you are if you put left or right English on it. In fact, you're going to find when we talk about the routes, most of the routes that I use are based on scratch shots and then adding English to avoid the scratch in the direction that I want. So we will always want to use at least a little bit of side spin on every shot. You'll find that if you shoot a shot like this and you put top English on it, you have a high degree of chance of scratching in the corner. If you put just a little bit of draw on it, you have a high chance of scratching here. If you put a lot of draw on it, you have a high chance of scratching here. But if you put top right on this, now you're forcing it into the rail, so you're not going to scratch in that corner. You're going to find that if you put bottom right, that now you're making it come shallow up. If you put bottom left, you're making it come to this rail. If you put straight bottom, watch out for that corner. A little bit, like if you put like a half a tip of draw, you'll end up in this corner. If you put full draw on it, you may end up in the side, okay? But if you put that left or right, your chances of those scratches go way down. So you'll hear commentators talk about it, you'll hear Earl talk about it, about how one of the big differences between the way the pros shoot and the way everybody else shoots is that pros use a lot more side spin. Well, the reason they use more side spin is twofold. One is to get more accurate positions, but reason two is because the side spin tends to take you away from the scratch. Let me ask you a question. Ever shoot a shot like that and scratch it in the side, the impossible scratch, the one where you're up here, maybe you're something like that, and you scratch in the side, and it seems like that's impossible, but the top English without the side spin causes the cue ball to come straight up, and then the forward spin takes and it finds a way into that pocket. Happens all the time. You see it and you look at it and you say, I don't understand why that happened. Well, if you had used side spin, so instead of using just straight top, if you'd use top right to get to the rail, now you have no chance of that scratch. And you have really no chance of this scratch either unless you just get it exactly wrong. So when we're talking about these routes, we always want to put some kind of side spin on it. Now, yes, side spin will make the shot harder to pocket. That is true in some cases. Some cases it actually makes it easier. It's called helper English, but we'll talk about that another time. Because of the throw, because of the effects of throw, both spin-induced throw and cut-induced throw, because of those, it does make it a little harder to make it into the pocket, but you'll find that it's actually better to miss this shot than it is to scratch, right? Let's think about that from a risk-reward standpoint. If I risk missing the shot because I put a whole bunch of English on it to get down the table, I'm still better off than giving the person ball in hand by scratching in that side, right? Okay, so, and I may not be explaining that really perfectly, but the short version is always put side spin of some kind on it. Never hit center ball when you're going to rails to get around the table, okay? Rule number 4, and this is true of every route, including the open table route, it is easier to control the cue ball when you follow than it is when you draw. So if you're given a choice, let's say I have the choice, I've got to come all the way down the table down here, and I have the choice. I can't go straight up the table because I'll run into the 9, and even if I stop out here, I don't have a shot. So I need to either get to this side or I need to get to this side, right? It is easier to control the cue ball if I go this way, forward on the shot, than it is to go that way with draw. So when we're given an alternative of forward or back, we always want to go forward unless there's something else causing us to choose to come back. It's just easier to go forward than it is back, easier to control the cue ball going forward than it is back. And there are a lot less things that can go wrong with the shot going forward than there are going back. Of course, back, if you remember, it accentuates your English. So you notice when I went top right, maximum top right, cue ball hits about here, right? Same shot. But now I'm drawing it with maximum bottom left. It hits second diamond. You see how much sharper the angle is here compared to that? It accentuates the English, which means it accentuates the throw, and it means that the angle that you come back is a much greater angle, which means I have to hit it harder to get it to the same place. Okay? So always go forward when you have the choice rather than backward. Okay, so let's talk about going straight up the table. So number one thing, if I have a shot that is roughly equal, well, so first of all, let's talk about when to go to a rail and not. We talked about you always want to have the last rail you hit be the one that's in the leave zone. Okay, so if I'm looking at this shot going into that corner, if that's my leave, which it should be on this shot, that's the right leave, you can see the leave zone points at this rail. Okay, so this shot, I will want this rail to be the last one I hit. Now, it is possible that I have an angle out here where I can make the shot, but I'm going to have to hit the rail and come down here and hit this rail. If that's the case, I want to hit this hard enough to go rail, 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 and roll back. Why? Because I want to come up the leave zone. We talked about that in the leave zone video. Okay, if I have a fairly straight angle, then I can just roll straight up the leave zone like that, and we're good. But either way, I want this to be the last rail. Now, if it's out here, okay, now it's out in the center of the table, I've got the same shot. Now, I have the choice of coming backwards or going forwards. And when I say going forwards, I don't necessarily mean top English. This could also be bottom inside English. You just hit it soft, and the cue still goes that way. Now, that sharpens the angle. Again, because it's draw, it's sharpening this angle. So for me, if I have this shot and there are no obstacles, okay, the 9 is down here, now it's pointed at this rail. I want to hit here or here, preferably here. I always want to be above the ball if I can. It's easier to cut it naturally than it is to cut it backwards, especially if it turns out to be a blind shot where you can't see the pocket. So here, I want to go forward to this rail if I want to put the 9 here, or I want to come backward to this rail if I'm going to put the 9 there. What I don't want to do is come straight up the table. I know it's out in the middle of the table, but if I come straight up the table, even if that's at an angle, I'm still crossing the leave zone. So I want it to come back to the rail. So how do I do this? Well, a little bit of bottom left, not a lot of left, because I want this to come kind of shallow. I don't want it to come back to this second diamond. I want it to come up here. So just a little bit of left to keep it from falling in the side pocket. Shoot it and bounce off that rail, and now I've got a perfect leave. Am I close? No, I could have gotten closer. If I kept rolling, I'd been up here. A little bit easier shot, but you know what? The whole point is this leave zone covers this entire area, so I came where I wanted to go. It's got a great degree of variance in where you, how hard you have to hit it and where you can go to get that lead. Okay? If this is in the middle like this, though, I don't want to draw, right? What I want to do is I want to roll forward to that side. In the case we just had, I was making the assumption there's a ball there that makes it risky to go forward, okay? So if I go forward here, I run the risk of running into the 8 or landing behind the 8, you know, or coming off the face of the 8 and rolling down here and ending up with nothing. So I would go backwards on that one. If there's no obstacle, then I prefer to go forward. And again, if you look at it from the center of the pocket through the ball, it's pointed at this, it's actually pointed directly at the side pocket, but it's this long rail it's pointed at. So I want to hit above it and roll through the zone this way. And there we are, perfect leave, right? So that's what we're trying to do with that, with that up and down the table shot. It is possible to go more than one rail. So for example, on this shot, I might choose, now, this shot is pointed at the long rail, right? It's pointed at this rail, but it's only got a very small area to work with. So in this case, I would play for the short hop, where I go in, so in this case, what I don't want to do is hit the short rail and bounce off and out. I want to hit this rail. So I'm going to use you see how I get nothing if I do it that way? So I need a sharper angle, right? So to get that sharper angle, I'm going to use bottom inside, because remember that sharpens the angle to here, which should take me from here to there, down here somewhere. And we end up with the perfect leaf. So again, this goes back to, I want to hit the rail. I want to hit the rail that the leaf zone is pointed at as my last rail, except in the case of that short hop, and you just saw me short hop into position. Okay, so what do we have here? We have straight up the table. We have forward to the rail and back to the rail, and we can choose which rail segment we want to hit. If I want to hit this one, I use maximum inside spin, maximum right spin in this case. If I want to hit this rail, I can do that by hitting on less side spin. So now I hit that rail instead. Okay, so maximum side spin, this rail, up around, so the shot I just shot was at 130 on the cue ball. That takes it to this rail. Maximum side spin, closest rail to the ball. Let's side spin the other one. So maximum, which if I had no top on it, which I'm not going to do because I'd have to force that on this shot. But 3 o'clock English, we'll take it to that rail. And 1 o'clock takes it to that rail. So that's how you control which one of those two segments you hit. Same thing holds true going backwards. Again, we don't want to go backwards unless we have to. If I hit this with maximum bottom left or maximum left, comes back to the rail nearest me. Okay? Hit the same shot, but instead of using that, I use like 6:30 or 7 o'clock English. Now I go up there. Now, if I use a lot of bottom English, I'll always hit this rail, or I'll land in the side. Because if I use a lot of bottom English on this, it accentuates that spin. But if I hit this, let's say half a tip of English at the 7 or at the 6:30 position, so just off center. I hit it soft, now I can get up to this rail. Again, very hard on the draw side to get to this rail doing that from the center table position. Now, what if the ball's over here? Okay, again, we're still talking about up the table, right? So I can still play that same shot I shot from the middle. It's going to come a little shallower. That's okay. So I want to do this same bottom right English. And it does exactly the same thing it did in the middle of the table. Okay, the table, because of the proportions, will even that out. Again, hit this side rail. I could have come up, I would have short hopped, I would have ended up here. Didn't want to short hop because of how close I would be to the 9. Short hopping out here is okay, short hopping up here is not. We'll talk, again, going to talk about that one at length. Again, here we are, we've got the same shot. Now this one's a little different because now we can't get to this far rail. So from here to about half a diamond on this side, we can get to this rail just fine for our leave. Beyond that, now we can't get to this rail. Now we can only get to this one. But same shot, bottom right hand English, maximum bottom right. And you see the cue ball is now going up there. Okay? That's not what we want. We wanted it to come over this way. So, if I have this shot, where I'm between here and half a diamond here, now I want to go back to this rail to get on that side of the 9, okay? So, and I can do that with bottom left. Or I can use top left. Actually, just a little bit of top. I don't want so much top that, that I throw the cue ball forward, but I can use just a little tiny bit of top and still come back to that rail and go down that way. I know I missed the shot, I didn't aim it. But you see, it's all about deciding where you want to be and where you want to get. So if you're on the short side of the table, then you want to, and you want to shoot the 9 ball that way, you can do so by using English to hit the rail and come over and hit the rail. Okay, and that is, in this case, bottom right. Top right, you can do the same thing, but you have to get a little bit of curve in the cue ball to get there. So you have to, and that's almost the identical shot as the bottom inside was. That worked because I hit it hard enough to cause the cue ball to pick up a slight arc. Okay, so if you were watching, you saw the cue ball came off of here, came up, and then went forward. It didn't go here and forward, it went here, there, and forward. So on this shot, I would prefer the bottom right because I'm not having to control that arc. I'm not having to control how far out it goes before it arcs. You can do that, and you can do it successfully. If I wanted to hit this rail first, let's say the 9 was up here, so the side pocket's my obvious choice, but I have, going forward to do that, I have to get, my speed and my English have to be exactly right so that I end up with that lead that I wanted. Again, this rail and then short hop off that rail. But I have to be absolutely precise in that English and the speed. I have to control the speed perfectly to make it arc at the right place, otherwise I can scratch. Or I can end up hitting this rail first and going 1, 2, and the ball comes up here, and now I've got nothing. I'm in no man's land on the 50-yard line. So instead, for this shot, I actually prefer bottom right, and just let the cue ball come over, bounce off that rail, and into perfect position for the 9. So that's all I'm going to say today about route number 2, which is the 3 variations of straight up the table. Again, a big thank you to all of those that have paid the ultimate price defending our country. Thanks and condolences to all of the families of those who were left behind, and a reminder that Memorial Day is about remembrance, not about parties and picnics. So have a good weekend, enjoy the long weekend, but take a minute and just remember some of those that have given their lives. With that, I'll let you go. We'll be back very shortly with route number 3, which will be the back and forth, side to side routes on the table. With that, we'll let you go. Have a great weekend, and we'll see you next time.